The Great Hall of Emperor Tame stretched longer than 3 football fields. Golden pillars reached up to a ceiling painted with scenes of conquered worlds. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in floating chairs that glowed with soft blue light. They had all come to watch the annual impossible challenges on the prison planet Koros 7. Captain Nari shifted nervously in her seat. Her dark eyes never left the small figure standing in the center of the massive arena floor below. Do-hyun looked so tiny down there, just 12 years old with messy black hair and worn clothes that had seen too many worlds. He carried only a simple backpack and the quiet confidence that had gotten them this far. "Why did you bring a child to my court?" Emperor Tame asked from his throne. The Vorthak ruler was 8 feet tall with silver skin that seemed to shine in the arena lights. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "Does Earth truly have no worthy champions left?" Do-hyun looked up at the Emperor without fear. "I volunteered, sir. My planet needs someone who can think differently." Laughter rippled through the alien audience. A creature with 4 arms and purple scales slapped its knee. Another being that looked like a walking tree shook its branches with amusement. Even some of the other human prisoners in the far seats looked embarrassed. Emperor Tame leaned forward on his throne. His golden crown caught the light as he smiled with too many teeth. "Child, I have seen warriors from 100 worlds try and fail at today's challenge. Beings twice your size with claws like swords and armor like starship hulls. What makes you think a small human boy can succeed where they could not?" "Maybe being small is exactly what I need," Do-hyun said simply. The Emperor's advisor whispered something in his ear. General Hyok was a thin creature with 6 eyes that never seemed to blink all at once. He had been the one to design most of the impossible challenges over the years. "Very well," Emperor Tame said. "Let me explain the rules. In the depths below this arena lives the Shadow Maw of Koros 7. For 100 years it has killed every creature we have sent against it. Warriors, beasts, machines, nothing has survived more than minutes in its presence." The Emperor stood up and his voice grew louder. "Your task is simple, child. Enter its domain and tame the beast. Make it obey your commands. Show that it will not harm you when you approach." "And if I succeed?" Do-hyun asked. "If you succeed," the Emperor laughed, "then you may have anything you wish, even my entire planet if you desire it. But you will not succeed. No one ever has." Captain Nari gripped her armrest. She wanted to shout for Do-hyun to run. This was madness, but they had come too far to turn back now. Earth needed this chance. The human colonies needed hope. Do-hyun stepped forward. His young voice carried clearly through the silent hall. "When I succeed, I want you to free every world you have conquered, not just Earth, all of them." The laughter stopped. Emperor Tamen's expression changed. His silver skin seemed to darken. Around the hall, alien representatives from conquered worlds sat up straighter. Some began whispering to each other in languages that sounded like music, or wind, or grinding metal. "Did this child just raise the stakes?" Dr. Soo-young asked from her seat near the throne. The Vorthak scientist had been studying humans for years, but had never seen such boldness from one so young. "He did," General Hyok said quietly. His 6 eyes were all focused on Do-hyun now. "If he somehow succeeds, the Emperor would lose his entire empire." "Impossible," Dr. Soo-young replied. "The Shadow Maw has killed creatures 10 times larger and stronger than any human. It shows no mercy to any living thing." But Emperor Tame was no longer laughing. A challenge had been made in front of witnesses from across the galaxy. By the ancient laws of his people, he could not refuse without losing all honor. And if word spread that the great emperor had broken his sacred word, the Vorthak Empire would crumble from within. "You understand what you ask for, boy," the emperor said slowly. To free every conquered world would mean the end of everything I have built. Billions of beings across thousands of systems. Yes, sir, Do-yun said. That is exactly what I am asking for. The hall erupted in noise. Alien voices rose in excitement, fear, and disbelief. Some representatives were standing now. Others were quickly speaking into communication devices to contact their homeworlds. Captain Nari felt her heart pounding. She had known Do-hyun was brave, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. The boy was betting the freedom of the entire galaxy on his ability to face a monster that had never been defeated. Emperor Tame raised one hand, and the hall fell silent. Very well, child. By the ancient laws of challenge and response, I accept your terms. Tame the Shadow Maw, and I will free every world under my rule. But when you fail, and you will fail, your death will be broadcast to every human colony as a warning about the price of rebellion. I understand, Do-hyun said. The Emperor gestured toward a massive metal door at the far end of the arena. It began to grind open with a sound like breaking mountains. Beyond the doorway lay only darkness. The creature waits below, Emperor Tame said. You may take whatever weapons or tools you think will help. Though I warn you, nothing has worked before. Do-hyun shook his head. I do not need weapons, sir. I have everything I need right here. He patted his simple backpack. More laughter from the audience, but it sounded nervous now. Even the aliens who found humans amusing were beginning to sense that something unusual was happening. Captain Nari watched as Do-hyun walked toward the dark doorway. Each step echoed in the silent hall. She wanted to call out to him, to tell him she was proud, to tell him to be careful. But there was nothing left to say. The boy paused at the threshold and looked back one last time. His eyes found Captain Nari in the crowd, and he smiled. It was the same gentle smile he had worn when he first volunteered for this mission back on Earth. Then Do-hyun stepped into the darkness, and the metal door began to close behind him. Emperor Tame settled back on his throne with satisfaction. Begin the countdown, he commanded. I give the child 5 minutes before we hear his screams. But deep in her heart, Captain Nari felt something the Emperor did not expect. Hope. The metal door slammed shut behind Do-hyun with a sound like thunder. Complete darkness wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. The air smelled of old stone and something else, something wild and dangerous that made his nose wrinkle. Above him, he could hear the muffled voices of thousands of aliens placing bets on how quickly he would die. Some said 5 minutes, others said 2. A few optimistic voices suggested he might last 10 minutes if he ran fast enough. Do-hyun did not plan to run at all. He pulled a small light from his backpack and switched it on. The pale beam cut through the darkness, revealing rough stone walls that stretched up higher than he could see. He was standing on a narrow ledge with steps carved into the rock leading down into an enormous pit. The steps were old and worn smooth by countless feet. How many creatures had walked down these same stones to face the Shadow Maw over the past 100 years? How many had climbed back up? None, according to the stories. Do-hyun began his descent. Each step echoed in the vast space around him. The walls were covered with scratch marks, deep gouges in the stone that looked like they came from claws the size of his entire body. Some of the marks were old and weathered, others looked fresh. As he walked deeper, the air grew warmer. Somewhere far below, he could hear breathing, slow, deep breaths that sounded like wind through a cave. The Shadow Maw was down there waiting for him. The steps ended at the floor of the pit. Do-hyun raised his light and gasped at what he saw. The space was huge beyond imagination. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. The walls curved away on all sides, forming a natural arena larger than any stadium on Earth. Bones littered the ground everywhere he looked. Not just small bones, but massive skulls and rib cages from creatures he could not identify. Some looked like they came from the four-armed aliens he had seen in the Emperor's court. Others belonged to beings he had never imagined. In the center of the pit stood a pile of rocks and metal scraps. It looked almost like a nest built from the armor and weapons of defeated challengers. And curled around that nest, sleeping in the dim light, was the most beautiful and terrifying creature Do-hyun had ever seen. The Shadow Maw was larger than the biggest whale on Earth. Its body was covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water, dark purple and deep blue and midnight black all flowing together as it breathed. 6 legs supported its massive frame, each ending in claws that gleamed like crystal. 2 enormous wings were folded against its back. One wing looked perfect and strong. The other hung at an odd angle with torn membrane and bent bones that had healed wrong. On its long neck sat a head shaped like a dragon from old Earth stories, but with eyes like burning stars. The creature's breathing was labored. Each exhale came with a soft whimper of pain that it tried to hide. Do-hyun could see infected wounds along its side, where metal spears had struck and broken off, leaving the points buried in its flesh. This was not just a monster. This was a suffering animal. Up in the arena above, betting had begun in earnest. Alien. Voices called out odds and wagers. Emperor Tame leaned forward on his throne with eager anticipation. Dr. Soo-young activated recording devices to capture the boy's final moments for study. "He has been down there for 3 minutes," General Hyok reported. "The creature should have detected him by now." "Perhaps it is toying with him," the Emperor suggested. "The Shadow Maw sometimes likes to play with its food." But Captain Nari was not listening to their cruel words. She was watching the display screens that showed the pit below. What she saw there made her heart race with something that was not fear. Down in the darkness, Do-hyun had turned off his light. He sat cross-legged on the stone floor about 50 feet from the sleeping creature. His backpack was open beside him, and he had pulled out a small item that Captain Nari recognized, a music player, the same one his sister Minji had given him before. The human colonies were attacked. The same one that held recordings of all the songs she used to sing to him when he was younger and afraid of the dark. Do-hyun pressed play and soft music began to fill the vast pit. Not loud electronic music, but something gentle and warm. A simple lullaby that Minji had sung in Korean, mixed with humming that needed no translation. The Shadow Maw's burning eyes opened. For a moment, Predator and boy stared at each other across the bone-scattered floor. The creature's massive head lifted from its nest and turned toward the source of the strange new sound. Its nostrils flared as it tested the air. Do-hyun did not move. He did not run or reach for weapons he did not carry. He simply sat there letting the music play while he watched the great beast with calm curiosity. The Shadow Maw rose to its feet with obvious pain. Its injured wing dragged against the ground as it began to move toward him. Each step sent tremors through the stone floor. Its claws clicked against the bones of previous challengers. Above them, the alien audience fell silent. This was not how the show usually went. Most challengers screamed and ran when they first saw the beast. This small human was doing something completely different. The creature stopped just 20 feet away from Do-hyun, its massive head lowered until those burning star eyes were level with his face. Its breath was hot and smelled of old meat and infection. Do-hyun began to hum along with the music. The same gentle tune that had helped him sleep through storms and battles and all the terrible things that had happened to his world. His voice was soft and young, but it carried clearly in the vast space. The Shadow Maw tilted its great head to one side like a curious cat. It had never heard sounds like these before. In all its long years of captivity, the only sounds it knew were screams of terror and pain. This was something entirely new, something beautiful. The creature settled down, on its belly with a soft rumble that was almost like purring. Its burning eyes never left the small human who sat so fearlessly before it, singing gentle songs in the darkness. For the first time in 100 years, the shadow maw of Koros 7 was not thinking about killing. It was thinking about the strange warmth, feeling growing in its chest as it listened to the boy's quiet song. The music played softly in the vast pit, while Do-hyun and the shadow maw watched each other. Hours had passed since the boy first sat down and began his gentle song. Above them, the alien audience grew restless and confused. "This is not entertainment," complained a purple-scaled creature from the viewing stands. "When will the killing begin?" Emperor Tame frowned from his throne. His golden crown felt heavy on his head as he stared at the display screens showing the pit below. "Something is wrong," he muttered to General Hyok. "The beast should have attacked by now." "Perhaps it is sick," Dr. Soo-young suggested from her position near the royal seats. "I have never seen it behave this way before." But Captain Nari knew exactly what was happening. She had seen Do-hyun work with injured animals back on Earth. The boy had a gift for understanding creatures that others saw only as dangerous. Where most people saw monsters, he saw pain that needed healing. Down in the pit, Do-hyun slowly reached into his backpack. The shadow maw's burning eyes tracked his every movement, but the creature did not seem afraid. It watched with the same curiosity. A house cat might show toward an interesting new toy. "Easy, friend," Do-hyun whispered in Korean, then repeated the words in broken, universal language. "I want to help you." The boy pulled out a small medical kit. It was nothing fancy, just basic supplies that Captain Nari had insisted he carry. Bandages and antiseptic cream and pain medicine that worked on most alien biology. Things meant for treating small cuts and bruises, not for dealing with wounds on a creature the size of a building. But Do-hyun had noticed something important during their long staring contest. The shadow maw favored its right side when it moved. Its breathing was shallow and labored. Most telling of all was the way it held its damaged wing, not just broken but infected. The poor creature was in constant pain. The boy stood up slowly, keeping his movements smooth and calm. The shadow maw raised its massive head but did not back away. If anything, it seemed curious about what this strange, small human was planning to do. "Those are deep wounds," Do-hyun said as he approached. "They must hurt very much." The creature's nostrils flared as it caught the scent of the medical supplies. After 100 years of violence, it knew the smell of things meant to cause pain. But these smells were different, clean and sharp, but not threatening. Do-hyun stopped just within reach of those crystal claws. Up close, he could see that several metal spear points were still buried in the creature's thick hide. The wounds around them were red and swollen with infection. No wonder the poor beast was always angry and violent. It was sick and hurting with no one to help. "I know it hurts," the boy said softly. "But I can make it better if you let me." He opened the medical kit and pulled out a tube of antiseptic cream. The shadow maw watched with those burning star eyes as Do-hyun squeezed some of the cream onto his fingers. Above them, the alien audience was in chaos. Some were demanding their money back. Others were calling for guards to go down and restart the big, proper entertainment. But Emperor Tame held up one hand for silence. "Let us see what happens," he commanded, though his voice sounded uncertain. General Hyok leaned close to whisper in his ear. "Sire, if word of this spreads, it could cause problems. The other conquered species might begin to think humans are more than just another weak race." "One boy with medicine does not make humans special," the Emperor replied. But his 6 eyes remained fixed on the screens showing the impossible scene below. Do-hyun reached out slowly and touched the infected wound on the creature's side. The shadow maw tensed, but did not pull away. Its breathing grew faster as the boy began to clean the old injury. With gentle, careful movements, the antiseptic stung at first, and the great beast rumbled deep in its throat. But then the cooling medicine began to work, and the constant burning pain started to fade for the first time in years. The creature's rumble changed from distress to something almost like relief. "There we go," Do-Yun murmured as he worked. "I know it hurts now, but it will feel better soon." He cleaned 3 different wounds, working slowly and carefully around the embedded metal spear points. The Shadow Maw remained perfectly still during the treatment. Once it even lowered its great head to sniff curiously at the medical supplies. Other representatives in the viewing stands were beginning to understand what they were seeing. Jinwoo, the warrior from the mining colonies, leaned forward in his floating chair. His people had always believed that strength came from domination and force. But here was a human child showing a completely different kind of power. "He is not trying to defeat it," Jinwoo whispered to himself. "He is trying to heal it." Eunha, the telepathic representative from the crystal worlds, was having similar thoughts. Her species could read the emotions of other beings across great distances. What she sensed from the pit below was not the usual mixture of fear and rage that accompanied these challenges. Instead, she felt curiosity from the great beast and compassion from the small human. 2 very different beings beginning to understand each other despite having no common language except kindness. When Do-Hyun finished treating the wounds, he sat back down on the stone floor. The Shadow Maw looked down at its side where the constant burning pain had finally stopped. For the first time in decades, the infection was beginning to heal. The creature made a sound unlike anything the audience had ever heard from it before. Not a roar or growl, but something almost musical, a low harmonic note that resonated through the pit like the song of some great whale. "It is singing," Dr. Soo-young breathed in amazement. "The Shadow Maw is actually singing." Do-Hyun smiled and began to hum along with the creature's deep song. 2 very different voices joined together in a simple melody that spoke of friendship and trust and the end of long loneliness. Above them, Emperor Tame felt something cold settle in his stomach as he realized what was happening. The impossible was becoming possible. 3 days had passed since Do-Yun first entered the pit. The great arena above had emptied and filled again several times as word spread across the galaxy about the impossible events happening below. Representatives from conquered worlds stayed, glued to their viewing screens. Even some of Emperor Tamen's own advisors were beginning to whisper among themselves. The pit had become something it had never been before, a place of peace instead of death. Do-Hyun slept curled against the Shadow Maw's warm side like a small child next to a giant, friendly dog. The creature's massive wing was folded protectively over him, keeping him safe and warm. When the boy stirred, in his sleep, the beast would hum soft, low notes until he settled down again. During the day, they explored the vast underground space together. Do-Yun had discovered that the pit was much larger than anyone knew. Tunnels led off in several directions, to underground pools of fresh water and caves filled with edible moss and fungi. The Shadow Maw had been surviving down here for 100 years completely alone, but the creature was not meant to live alone. As Do-Yun spent time with it, he began to understand that it was highly intelligent and deeply social. It had been slowly going mad from isolation and pain with no one to talk to and nothing to do except fight and kill the challengers sent down to face it. "You are lonely," Do-Yun said as they sat by one of the underground pools. "Just like me." The Shadow Maw tilted its great head and made questioning sounds. Over the past 3 days, it had been learning to understand some of the boy's words and tone of voice. In return, Do-Yun was beginning to recognize different meanings in the creature's various rumbles and songs. The boy pulled food from his backpack and shared it with his new friend. Simple protein bars and dried fruit that tasted far better when split between 2 hungry beings. The Shadow Maw had shown him which of the underground plants were safe to eat and where to find the cleanest water. They were becoming a team. Above them, Emperor Tame paced back and forth in front of his throne. His silver skin had darkened with worry and anger. General Hayek and Dr. Suyong stood nearby reviewing data and reports that made no sense according to everything they thought they knew about both humans and the Shadow Maw. "This is impossible," the Emperor declared for the 100th time. "The beast has killed every challenger for a century, warriors with advanced weapons and armor, creatures with natural weapons far deadlier than anything a human possesses. How is one small boy succeeding where they all failed?" Dr. Suyong looked up from her data pad. "Sire, I have been studying the recordings carefully. The human is not trying to defeat the Shadow Maw. He is befriending it. Our previous challengers all approached it as an enemy to be conquered. This boy treats it as a potential companion." "Nonsense," General Hayek said, with all 6 eyes focused on the display screens. "It is just an animal, a dangerous predator with no higher intelligence." But even as he spoke, they could all see evidence to the contrary. The Shadow Maw was clearly responding to Do-hyun's words and gestures. It brought him things it thought he might need. It shared its knowledge of the underground cave system. Most remarkably, it had begun to obey simple commands. "Watch," Dr. Suyong said, as she pointed to the main screen. Down in the pit, Do-hyun was practicing with his new friend. "Sit," he said in universal language while making a downward gesture with his hand. The massive creature lowered itself to the ground with surprising grace for something so large. "Stay," Do-hyun said while holding up one hand. He walked across the cavern to fetch water from the pool. The Shadow Maw remained perfectly still until the boy returned and said, "Good friend," while patting its great snout. The creature's response was a deep, harmonic purr that made the stone walls vibrate gently. "It is not obeying out of fear," Dr. Suyong reported quietly. "My sensors show no stress hormones or signs of submission behavior. It is cooperating because it wants to please the human." High Priestess Ji-won spoke up from her place among the court advisors. "This could be a sign from the ancient powers. Perhaps our empire has grown too focused on conquest and forgotten the value of cooperation." "Superstitious nonsense," General Hayek snapped, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Military Commander Seok stepped forward with his own concerns. "Sire, regardless of what is happening down there, we must consider the political implications. Representatives from every conquered world are watching. If word spreads that a human child has accomplished what our greatest warriors could not, it will inspire rebellion across the galaxy." Emperor Tame stopped pacing and stared at the screens with burning eyes. The small human boy was now riding on the Shadow Maw's back as it walked through the underground tunnels. The creature moved carefully to ensure its passengers stayed safe and comfortable. They looked like old friends enjoying an adventure together. "Sire," Commander Seok pressed, "we could still claim the boy failed. Send soldiers down to eliminate both him and the creature. Tell the galaxy that the challenge ended as all the others have." "No," a new voice said firmly. Everyone turned to see Captain Nari standing at the back of the royal viewing area. She had been allowed to remain as Do-hyun's official representative, but until now she had stayed silent. "The challenge was broadcast live across the galaxy," she continued. "Billions of beings have watched everything that has happened. To break your sacred word now would destroy your empire faster than honoring it would." Emperor Taemin's expression darkened further. "You forget your place, human. I could have you executed for speaking without permission." "You could," Captain Nari agreed calmly, "but that would not change the truth of what I said." Down in the pit, Do-hyun was teaching his friend a new game. He would hide behind rocks and the Shadow Maw would pretend to search for him. When it found him, they would both make happy sounds together. It was the first time in 100 years that the creature had played. Other representatives in the viewing area were beginning to speak more openly now. Jinwoo, the mining colony warrior, was discussing the implications with others near him. "If humans can turn our greatest enemies into friends," he said thoughtfully, "what does that mean for how we understand strength and victory, Unha?" The telepathic representative was nodding in agreement. I can sense the emotions from both beings below. There is no deception or trickery. They genuinely care for each other. Emperor Tame heard these conversations and felt his carefully built empire beginning to shift beneath his feet like sand in an earthquake. Everything he had believed about power and dominance was being challenged by one small human boy and his impossible friendship. The question was no longer whether Do-Yun would succeed in taming the Shadow Maw. The question was, what would happen to the galaxy when he did? The great metal doors of the pit groaned open for the first time in 3 days. Sunlight streamed down the stone steps into the darkness below. Above in the arena, thousands of alien beings held their breath as they waited to see what would emerge. Footsteps echoed on the ancient stone. Light footsteps that belonged to a small human boy. But they were followed by something else. Heavy steps that shook the ground and made pebbles dance on the arena floor. Do-Hyun appeared first, climbing the steps with his simple backpack slung over his shoulder. His clothes were dirty, but he looked calm and happy. Behind him came a shadow that grew larger and larger as it approached the surface. Then the Shadow Maw of Koros 7 stepped into the light. The arena erupted in chaos. Aliens screamed and fled from their seats. Security guards raised weapons, only to lower them again in confusion. The massive creature that had been their most feared predator was following a 12-year-old human boy like a pet following its master. The Shadow Maw blinked its burning star eyes as they adjusted to the bright arena lights. It had not seen the sun in over 100 years. The creature looked around at all the fleeing aliens and rumbled deep in its throat. But when Do-Hyun placed a gentle hand on its snout, the rumble changed to something almost like laughter. "It is all right, friend," the boy said softly. "They are just scared. They do not understand you like I do." Emperor Tame remained frozen on his throne. His silver skin had gone completely white with shock. Around him, his advisors whispered frantically among themselves, but no one seemed to know what to do. The challenge had been clear. Tame the Shadow Maw. Make it obey commands. Show that it would not attack when approached. Do-Hyun had done all of these things and more. The creature was clearly devoted to him, showing affection and protectiveness that no one had thought possible. General Hayek leaned close to the Emperor's ear. "Sire, you must make a decision quickly. Honor the challenge or find a way to void it. But choose soon before the situation spirals beyond our control." But Emperor Tame was trapped. By the ancient laws of his people, a formal challenge could not be broken without destroying his honor and the honor of his entire bloodline. To break his word now would mean civil war within his own empire, as different factions fought for control. Yet to honor the challenge meant freeing every conquered world and ending the galactic empire he had spent his life building. Captain Nari stepped forward from the crowd of representatives. She moved slowly and carefully, keeping her hands visible. The Shadow Maw watched her approach but showed no signs of aggression. It seemed to understand that she was important to its new friend. "Do-Hyun," she called out. "Are you hurt?" "I am fine. Captain Nari," the boy replied with a bright smile. "And I want you to meet my friend. This is Shadow Maw, but I have been calling him Biol because his eyes look like stars." The massive creature lowered its great head so Do-Hyun could scratch behind what might have been ears. The sight of the fearsome beast acting like an affectionate pet sent fresh waves of amazement through the watching crowd. Dr. Soo-young was frantically taking readings with her instruments. "Impossible," she muttered. "The creature shows no signs of aggression or stress. Its behavior has completely changed." "How?" General Hayek demanded. "What did the boy do to it?" "Nothing to it," Captain Nari said loud enough for everyone to hear. "He did something for it." Do-Hyun treated the creature's infected wounds and showed it kindness. He gave it what it needed most after 100 years of isolation and pain. "Friendship," Do-Hyun added simply. Emperor Tame finally found his voice. "This proves nothing," he declared. "One tame beast does not make humans special. It could be a trick or some kind of alien technology we do not understand." But even as he spoke, the Emperor's words rang false. Everyone in the arena could see the genuine bond between boy and creature. There was no trickery here, only something that challenged everything they thought they knew about power and control. Young-Ho, the Emperor's oldest advisor, stepped forward. He was ancient even by Vorthak standards and had served the royal family for centuries. "My lord," he said carefully, "the challenge was witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy. To break your sacred word would violate the most fundamental laws of our people." "I know what it would mean," Emperor Tame snapped. "But to honor, it would mean the end of everything we have built." "Perhaps," Young-Ho replied quietly. "It is time to build something different." The words hung in the air like a challenge of their own. Around the arena, other voices began to join the conversation. Representatives from conquered worlds spoke more boldly now that they sensed weakness in the Emperor's position. "The human boy has shown us a new way," called out Jinwoo from the mining colonies. "Perhaps strength does not have to come from conquest." Yunha, the telepathic representative, nodded in agreement. "I can sense the truth in their bond. This is not domination, but partnership. The creature chooses to follow because it trusts and cares for the human." More voices joined in. Species that had been enemies for generations were beginning to see possibilities they had never imagined before. If a human child could befriend the most dangerous predator in the galaxy, what else might be possible through cooperation instead of conquest? Emperor Tame looked around his arena and saw his empire beginning to crumble. Not through military defeat, but through the simple example of one small boy who had chosen kindness over violence. "What do you propose?" he asked Do-Yun directly. "If I honor this impossible challenge and free every conquered world, my empire will collapse into chaos. Billions will suffer as different species fight for control of resources and territory." Do-Yun walked closer to the imperial throne, with Biol following protectively behind him. "Who says it has to collapse?" the boy asked. "What if instead of ending your empire, you changed it into something better?" "Explain," the Emperor commanded. "You have ships and technology and knowledge of how to organize across many star systems," Do-Yun continued. "But instead of using that power to conquer, you could use it to help. Humans are good at understanding different species and helping them work together. We could be partners instead of rulers and subjects." Captain Nari felt her heart swell with pride as she listened to the boy's words. This was why she had believed in him. Not because he was strong or clever, but because he could see solutions that others missed. Emperor Tame stared at the small human who was offering him a way to save face, while fundamentally changing everything his people had ever known. Around him, his advisors waited for his decision. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, as the Emperor considered an offer that could either save his empire or transform it beyond recognition. "Interesting proposal, boy," he said finally. "But why should I trust that humans can deliver on such promises?" Do-Hyun smiled and patted Biol's great snout. The massive creature purred contentedly. "Because we already did," the boy said simply. "We turned your most dangerous weapon into a friend." Emperor Tame stood up from his golden throne for the first time in 3 days. His silver skin had returned to its normal color as he made his decision. The great arena fell completely silent as billions of beings across the galaxy waited to hear words that would change everything. "The challenge has been completed," he announced. His voice carried clearly through the vast space and was broadcast to every conquered world. "The human boy has done what no warrior in 100 years could accomplish. He has tamed the Shadow Maw of Koros 7. Cheers erupted from the representatives of conquered worlds, but the Emperor held up his hand for silence. "However," he continued, "simply freeing every world would create chaos and suffering across the galaxy. Different species would fight each other for resources and territory. Billions would die in the wars that followed. Captain Nari felt her heart sink. Was the Emperor going to find a way to break his word after all? But Do-hyun stepped forward calmly. "That is why I am not asking you to just free everyone," he said. "I am asking you to build something better with them." Emperor Tame nodded slowly. "The boy has proposed an alternative. Instead of ending our empire, we will transform it. From this day forward, the Vorthak Empire becomes the Galactic Cooperation. No more conquered worlds, no more forced tribute. Instead, we will work together as partners." The arena erupted in confused voices. Some aliens cheered while others shouted questions. This was not what anyone had expected. "Humans will serve as mediators and healers throughout our territory," the Emperor continued. "They have demonstrated a unique ability to understand and befriend other species. They will help resolve conflicts and build bridges between different worlds." Dr. Soo-young looked amazed. "Sire, the political implications of this decision are enormous. You are essentially giving up absolute power in favor of a shared government." "Yes," Emperor Tame replied. "I am." General Hayok's 6 eyes were wide with shock. "But sire, this goes against everything our people have believed for thousands of years." "Then perhaps it is time our people learned new beliefs," the Emperor said firmly. Young-ho, the ancient advisor, smiled. "Wisdom often comes from the most unexpected sources. This human child has shown us that there are many different kinds of strength. Around the arena, representatives from different worlds were talking excitedly among themselves. The possibility of cooperation instead of conquest was something most had never dared to imagine. But seeing Do-hyun with his massive friend Beol made it seem not just possible, but natural. Jin-woo, the mining colony warrior, stood up in his floating chair. "The humans offer something we have never had before, a species that can help us understand each other instead of fighting each other." Yunha, the telepathic representative, nodded enthusiastically. "I can sense the genuine goodwill from the human representatives. They truly want to help rather than control." But not everyone was happy with this unexpected turn of events. Military Commander Seok stepped forward with obvious anger. "This is madness," he declared. "We are throwing away centuries of tradition and power for the promises of a child." Several of the Emperor's own guards moved to support Commander Seok. They had spent their lives serving an empire built on conquest and domination. This new path of cooperation seemed weak and dangerous to them. The situation was becoming tense when Beol made a soft rumbling sound. The massive shadow maw had been watching the argument with intelligent eyes. Now it moved forward to stand protectively near Do-hyun. But instead of showing aggression toward the dissenting soldiers, the great creature did something unexpected. It lowered its head in what was clearly a respectful greeting. Then it began to sing, the same deep harmonic notes that it had shared with Do-hyun in the pit below. But now the song was different. Richer and more complex, as if the creature was trying to communicate with everyone in the arena. Dr. Soo-young checked her instruments frantically. Incredible. The creature is producing harmonics across multiple frequency ranges. It is trying to speak to all the different species present using sounds they can understand. One by one, other beings in the arena began to respond to Beol's song, not with words, but with their own sounds of greeting and acceptance. The 4-armed purple creature from earlier made clicking noises that sounded almost musical. The tree like being swayed its branches in rhythm with the Shadow Maw's song. Even some of the Emperor's soldiers lowered their weapons as they listened to the impossible chorus of different species finding harmony together. "You see," Do-hyun said to Commander Seok, "it is not about being weak. It is about being strong enough to make friends instead of enemies." Captain Nari felt tears in her eyes as she watched the scene. This was what she had hoped for when she agreed to bring Do-hyun to the Emperor's challenge. Not just freedom for Earth, but a chance for all species to find a better way forward together. Emperor Tame raised his hands, and the great song gradually faded to silence. "The decision is made," he declared. "We will begin the transformation immediately. Human mediators will be assigned to every sector of our former empire. They will work with local leaders to establish new systems of cooperation and mutual aid." "And what of the Shadow Maw?" General Hayok asked uncertainly. Do-hyun smiled and patted his friend's great snout. "Biol will come with me. He can help show other dangerous creatures that there is a better way than violence. This prison planet will become a healing center where hurt animals and damaged relationships can both be repaired. Biol, Emperor." Tame repeated thoughtfully. "Star. An appropriate name for a creature that has helped light our way to a better future." Over the following months, the transformation was remarkable. Human teams spread throughout the galaxy working with local species to resolve old conflicts and build new partnerships. What had once been conquered territories became willing members of an alliance based on mutual benefit rather than forced submission. Do-hyun became known across the galaxy as the Tamer of Worlds, though he always insisted that his real talent was just listening to what creatures needed and trying to help them find it. Biol remained his constant companion, growing gentler and happier as they traveled together, helping other misunderstood beings find peace. The former prison planet, Koros 7, was transformed into a center for xenobiological research and interspecies therapy. Creatures that had been considered too dangerous to exist were given new chances at life with human caretakers who understood that aggression often came from pain or fear rather than evil nature. Captain Nari was promoted to Admiral and put in charge of the human mediation program. She often smiled when she remembered how worried she had been about bringing a 12-year-old boy to face the Empire's greatest challenge. Sometimes the smallest person really could change the biggest empire. And on quiet evenings when their work was done, Do-hyun would sit with Biol under alien stars and sing the same gentle lullabies that his sister Minji had taught him long ago. The songs that had started everything by showing one lonely creature that it was not alone anymore. The galaxy had learned that friendship was the strongest force of all.